What's up, guys? Artem MMA analysis here. Going to be talking about Dana White's Contender Series week number 5. Angelo hasn't fired me yet, so I'm going to keep making these Dana White's Contender Series videos until the end, hopefully. And so far, I'm not doing too bad on week 2 in my debut on the channel. I went 3-2, and then I went 5-0 in week 3, and then last week on week 4, I went 4-1. My one slip-up being Jack Cartwright. I went with the undefeated fighter there. I went with who I thought was the better grappler, but Jose Johnson, man, he must be working really hard on that grappling, because he looked great in that fight, especially in the grappling transitions as well, which was in the past he's really struggled with, so that's kind of crazy. But apart from that, we had exciting fights all up and down the card. Haley Cowan was like my one pick, which everyone wasn't picking. A lot of people were picking Claudia Leite on YouTube. Made me a little bit nervous because I'm not the best at picking women's MMA, I will admit, but I'm glad that she managed to get it done in another very razor close fight. As for the main event, Neves versus Parkin, 2 heavyweights, I believe the winner of this fight is going to end up getting a contract. I've just been wary of the intro time because I like to keep my intros short and sweet. So welcome to the We Want Picks YouTube channel. I'm Artem MMA Analysis, and we're going to be talking about Dana White's Contender Series 2022, week number 5. And in the first fight of the night, you've got Denise Gomes taking on Rayanne Amanda, and it's in the women's strawweight division. We've had one women's strawweight fight so far in the Contender Series, and the winner did not end up getting a contract, but I'm going to be picking Denise Gomes to win this fight here. And I think she is going to get a contract because I think Denise Gomes is going to win the fight by finish. She's 5-1, but she's fought a pretty high level of competition for the lack of experience that she does have. And she's a pretty big girl as well. She's fought at 125 in the past. Now she's going to be cutting down to 115, so she will be having a slight size advantage as well. But the reason why I mentioned the level of competition that these girls have fought, and that's because Rayanne Amanda has not been fighting the greatest level of competition as of recent. You know, this girl was 11-5. And when she was like 7-5, she took on a girl that was 0-1. And then she took on a girl that was 0-5. Debuting and debuting again. That's the last 4 wins that Rayanne Amanda has. If we look at the last 4 wins that Denise Gomes has, and if you keep in mind she was 1-1 when she took on this girl, she took on the 3-0 undefeated Adriana Rocha, then she took on another girl that was 3-0, another girl that was 3-0, and then a girl that was 12-8 over at Invicta FC. She's also only 22 years old. She's got a lot of improvement to do and a lot more learning and polishing up of her skill set. But her skill set at the moment, I believe, is going to be enough to beat Rayanne Amanda here. Denise Gomes on the feet, she throws more volume than Rayanne Amanda does. Amanda does throw a lot of volume, but in my opinion, it's a lot less impactful than the shots that Denise Gomes is throwing. Denise Gomes has a little bit of power in those hands, man, and she does throw a very decent amount of volume. She does like to mix it up a little bit. And if it comes down to the grappling, Rayanne Amanda, I believe that's probably her best opportunity to win the fight, is to lock up a submission, because she does have pretty good jiu-jitsu. She's got quite a few armbar wins in her record as well. But I think even then, Denise Gomes might even have a slight advantage, and I think that the takedown defense of Denise Gomes is, although pretty untested and somewhat spotty, Rayanne Amanda's offensive grappling doesn't necessarily seem to be too great either, so I do trust Denise Gomes to defend the takedowns, or at least reverse them up against the clinch, and win the fight at range. I think she's going to end up getting a ground and pound TKO. I think at least at some point in the fight she's going to end up on top of Rayanne Amanda. And Denise Gomes, 4 wins by TKO out of her 5 wins. Some of those by ground and pound. I think she's going to do the same again. I think Rayanne Amanda, she's just been fighting inexperienced opponents, and it's easy to look great against inexperienced opponents, but even then, Rayanne Amanda does have a couple of losses to girls that she really should be beating, or at least losses to girls that Denise Gomes would definitely defeat. Like in 2021, she took on a girl that was 3-1 and she lost to her, and then 2020 she lost to a girl that was 8-7. You know, I just don't think she's at the same level as Denise Gomes. I'm picking her with a pretty decent amount of confidence. In fact, I'm actually picking her to win by finish in the women's strawweight division. So that does tell you how confident I am in Denise Gomes. Potentially could make me look a little bit silly here, but I think Denise Gomes is going to win the fight at some point. She's going to end up on top, and she's going to rain down ground and pound, which will finish off the fight. So give me Denise Gomes, my TKO. Of course, it's women's strawweight. The fight could go the distance, so there's definitely a good chance that she wins a decision as well. But I think Denise Gomes just going to land more on the feet, land more powerful shots on the feet, and even in the grappling, it's at least competitive. But I would even give Gomes potentially a very slight advantage in that one there. Maybe the submission threat for Rayanne Amanda is probably higher, but even in the grappling, Gomes is going to be at least competitive, as I said before. And now we move up to Josh Wang-Kim versus Cameron Saaiman, and this potentially is a fight that could trip a few people up. I'm going with Josh Wang-Kim, but there's definitely a world where Cameron Saaiman is going to be able to lock up a submission and to get the win, but I will be siding with Josh Wang-Kim. He's a much more experienced fighter out of the two. Cameron Saaiman, not even 22 years old yet, potentially a little bit too green to be fighting for a Dana White's Contender Series contract, although there is a guy that is 17 years old fighting for a contract later on in the season, which is insane if you think about it. But yeah, Josh Wang-Kim, 15-1. Amateur record, and even then the one loss was to Jesse Strader, which isn't the greatest look in the world, but Jesse Strader did at some point end up in the UFC, so I guess that loss isn't too bad. And then the illegal elbows loss, it wasn't even that illegal, and it was just a weird situation. The ref, I don't know, man, I think the ref just didn't really know what to do. It was such a weird fight, but yeah, ever since then he's looked great. He has been beating guys that probably aren't the same level as him, but Josh Wang-Kim, very experienced amateur record, and I think he's got the better striking out of the two, out of Cameron Saaiman. The same thing with Cameron Saaiman. This guy hasn't really been fighting the greatest level of competition, but he's building up his base, he's building up his record. He's only 5-0 as a professional, and he also went 5-0 as an amateur as well. He debuted against a guy that was 0-2, and then he took on another guy that was 0-2, but since then he has been taking on better competition, 4-3, 4-4, and 8-7 only 2 weeks ago. So he's been fighting often, but it's also worth noting that Josh Wang-Kim has fought twice in 4 months. Cameron Saaiman has fought twice in 3 months as well. So that's crazy. These two have been super active, and I even believe at the time that this fight announced, Cameron Saaiman still hadn't fought his most recent fight. I'm pretty sure he still hadn't fought Sindai Maenglega, and that fight was coming up, and he fought him anyway, and now he's in the Contender Series, so he's coming off at least a fight 2 weeks ago, maybe even a training camp before that too, obviously. But yeah, Josh Wang-Kim, I think he's going to win the fight. On the feet, Cameron Saaiman's got really good kickboxing. He can mix it up with the kicks and with the hands, but I think the more dangerous kickboxer out of the two is Josh Wang-Kim. And even then, Cameron Saaiman, when he's striking, he throws a lot of volume, but he can be easily hit. He is quite a hittable fighter, and I don't think he wants to be a hittable fighter against such an experienced fighter in Josh Wang-Kim. Josh Wang-Kim, though, in the grappling situations, he can get a little bit sloppy, and Cameron Saaiman is a pretty good submission artist. He did beat his last opponent by decision, but he has got a couple of submissions in his amateur record, not in his pro record, as I was trying to point out, but in his amateur record he has, and he does have good ground and pound as well. I'd say Saaiman is probably going to look to grapple in this one here, but I think Josh Wang-Kim is going to win the fight on the feet, and I think he potentially is going to find a knockout at some point in the fight. Much more experienced fighter in my opinion, and I do believe he's a lot more polished than Saaiman as well, who was only 22 years old. Still a developing fighter, where Wang-Kim has had a super long amateur career of 15 wins to 1 loss. You know, that's a 16 fight amateur career as well, and he's been taking it very seriously. I know Wang-Kim has trained with Alexander Volkanovski in the past, maybe just like a one-off training camp, but he's still got very high level training behind him anyway. And he's also got a brother that's a good fighter as well. I believe his name is John Wang-Kim, and he went 15-1 as an amateur as well. So he's got a training partner in his brother who's also a pretty good fighter. So that's probably it for the breakdown, really. I think Josh Wang-Kim should win the fight on the feet. I think he's going to find a knockout on the feet, just because Cameron Saaiman can be hittable at times, and I think that he just doesn't have a super polished skill set if you compare it to Josh Wang-Kim, who's been doing it for a while, and he's the older guy. He's got more experience, and I'm just going to kind of trust that skill set over the skill set of Cameron Saaiman. But I think that even with a loss, Cameron Saaiman's going to end up in the UFC anyway. He's a super young prospect. His future's super bright. But I think today or next week, Wang-Kim will be able to get the victory. And now we've got Erisson Fajah returning after a failed contract attempt on Dana White's Contender Series 2021, where he did win his fight over Keelon, who's now doing pretty big things in the Road to UFC tournament. If you don't know what that is, it's a tournament based with all Asian fighters, and they're going to be fighting for a contract in an 8-man bracket. And Keelon, Erisson Fajah's previous opponent from last year, has won his first fight in the tournament, so now he's already advanced to the semi-finals. So it's actually a well-aging win in a way, but before that he beat a guy that was 9-4, and before that he wasn't beating the best level of competition. And I do mention the level of the competition a lot in these Dana White's Contender Series fights, as I do think it's important. And Jesus Santos Aguilar has fought some really good level of competition, man. This guy recently beat a guy that was 6-1, Jamie Alvarez, who was 8-3, Edgar Chairez, who fought on Dana White's Contender Series in week 3, and lost to Clayton Carpenter in a pretty competitive fight, who was 6-2 at the time. And before that, yeah, another 5-2 guy, 2-0 guy when he was 2-1, 1-0 when he was 1-1. And even when he was 0-1, he took on a guy that was 2-0. And he's also got a pretty brutal guillotine choke. He went on a 3-fight guillotine choke win streak, which is pretty interesting. But I don't think that Erisson Fajah is going to be shooting for takedowns in this one here. I think out of the two, Erisson Fajah is probably the striker, and I would say Jesus Santos Aguilar is probably the grappler. And I think that Erisson Fajah's got a pretty good striking advantage in this one here. I think that he's going to be throwing a little bit more volume, although he didn't really throw much volume at all in his Keelun fight, which was interesting, but he definitely threw with more power or more finishing intent, and I think that's what he's going to do in this one. I think he's probably going to come out a little bit more aggressive as well, since he didn't get the contract last time. So I'm going to be trusting Erisson Fajah on the feet here just to land more on Jesus Santos Aguilar, land with more power as well. And it's kind of a weird one with Aguilar because he's going to be shooting for takedowns, but when he shoots for takedowns, a lot of the time it's from quite far out, and I think Erisson Fajah is going to have good enough takedowns defense to read that and kind of defend the takedown, obviously. And then even then in the striking as well, Jesus Santos Aguilar isn't really able to find his range, and he kind of throws punches from quite far out, and he's really trying to stretch them, and it's like he doesn't want to engage in close combat, if that makes any sense. In the wrestling, a lot of the times he shoots takedowns out in the open, and then a lot of the times he's throwing punches out in the open as well. So I think Erisson Fajah should be able to capitalize that and just win the fight on the feet. I think that he's the better striker out of the two. I think he's going to throw a little bit more volume, and he likes to throw combinations as well, which should help him out a little bit here. But a weird one in the last fight for Fajah. There's an argument he actually lost the fight. I'm not going to lie, he did get knocked down in the first round, but he's come back, and now he's fighting Aguilar. It's such a weird fight because Aguilar he's so good on paper, but when I watched his fights, I just wasn't too sure what to think. He kind of struggles to find his range on the feet and in the grappling as well. It's a weird one. I don't know what the odds are because I'm recording this before odds come out, but a lot of people picking Aguilar. I completely understand the level of competition that he's fought is very high level, but for me, just watching the fights and seeing what he's bringing to the table, I don't think Fajah is going to shoot a takedown or a lazy takedown for Aguilar to snatch up, and I don't think that Fajah is going to want to engage in the grappling. So I'm going to be trusting Fajah to keep the fight on the feet and just land the more powerful shots, land the more damaging shots, and win a decision that way. And if he does, he will get a contract. No one has ever fought on Dana White's Contender Series, won twice, and then not got a contract yet. So I think that he'll probably get it signed. Even then, I think Santos Aguilar will probably get signed as well if he wins, because it is at 125 and the UFC does need flyweights. That's probably it for this breakdown here. Yeah, Aguilar, the better grappler out of the two, the better striker goes to Fajah, in my opinion anyway, from what I've seen. And I think that Fajah is going to defend the takedowns, and I think he's just going to look pretty good on the feet. I think he's going to land more, he's going to land the more powerful shots. So that's it for the breakdown. Let's just move on to the next fight. And now we move up the card to Erisson Gogoladze taking on Darius Flowers, and this is actually a really good matchup. I feel like the odds might be a little bit wide on this one here. I don't know what the odds are now, but I'm assuming Gogoladze is probably going to be a pretty big favourite, but Flowers is going to be an underdog that's going to fight for your money. The pick is Gogoladze, but I do want to talk about Flowers a little bit more. He lost his last fight a year and 2 months ago, and he took 9 months off, and he's since fought 3 times in 3 months, which is awesome. He actually fought 3 times in about 1 month, or 3 times in 3 weeks, which is crazy. And I think Dana White and the team noticed that and was like, man, we need to get this guy on the roster if he's going to fight so often. But I don't think they've given him a favourable matchup in Erisson Gogoladze here. But Darius Flowers, in that 9 months since the loss, he must have worked a lot, because he come out, he looked a lot more in shape than he was prior to that. He looked a lot more technical as well. He just looked like a better fighter overall, if that makes any sense. But he is a pretty small guy for even 170. He's now dropping down to 170. He only stands at 5'9", but in that 5'9" frame, he does pack a lot of power in those punches, and he does have a pretty good wrestling base as well, which is his path to victory here. But I don't think he's gonna be able to use the wrestling base, or just use his game plan against Gogoladze, because Gogoladze is a savage, man. This guy's crazy. He's got 3 first round KOs in a row. In fact, one of them was 15 seconds into the first round. His last loss was to Henderson Fajah, who's fought in PFL, I believe it was in 2021, and even before that he was fighting really good guys, 23-7, 10-5, 15-5, 7-3. And like he's just been working. He's been fighting a pretty good level of competition. Darius Flowers has too, somewhat, but he didn't have the greatest start to his career. But he's since turned it around. I think he's definitely just taking the fights a lot more seriously. especially in that 9-month break that he took. But the pick is Erisson Gogoladze. I think he's just the better striker overall. He's got good kickboxing, he's got kicks, he's got strikes, he's also got submissions on his record as well. He doesn't have many. I think he's got 8 KOs and like 4 submissions, 3 submissions, but he can get a submission if he needs to. Darius Flower, he's a very strong guy. You know, he's 5'9", and he's going to be packing all of that, all of his frame into a 5'9" frame at 170 against the 6'2" Gogoladze. But I just think that Gogoladze is going to throw a lot of volume. He's going to start pretty fast, and he's just going to be a lot taller and just bigger than Flowers in general. I think he's going to throw with power. I think he's going to throw with volume. I think he's going to throw with intent early on, and I do think he is going to be able to get Darius Flowers out of there pretty quickly. But Flowers, he's got an opportunity here, man. Like, he's not going to take it too lightly. He's a guy that will fight for your money for sure. He's primarily a boxer, so he probably does want the fight on the feet, but I don't think against Gogoladze that is the best game plan. I think he's best to use his wrestling and take Gogoladze down and win a wrestling-based fight, but whether or not he's going to be able to utilize that game plan is yet to be seen. Gogoladze, I think he's just the better striker. He's more powerful. Arguably more powerful. I mean, Flowers is a powerful guy at 185, and we'll see what he looks like at 170, but he's powerful, man. He's got a lot of KOs in his career, 3 in the first round recently. I'm going to be going Gogoladze by KO in this one here, and I think that he should get the job done, and he will look really good doing it, but there is a path to victory that against that Flowers has that I should at least mention in case something crazy happens, but I think Gogoladze is going to be a big favourite when the line's open, and I think he should be able to get the job done and earn himself a contract. He's only 24 years old as well, so this guy is super young, a lot of time to improve. From Georgia as well, and I know that they're trying to promote fighters from outside of the US right now. You've got Australia doing big things, you've got the UK doing big things like London, and then you've got Georgian fighters like Ilia Topuria. We're going to add Erisson Gogoladze to that list as well. Let's get into the main event, man. I'm really excited for this whole card. It's a really good one. And now we're at what I like to call the main event of the evening, but I believe it's officially the featured bout. But we've got Eduardo Neves taking on Michael Parkin, 2 heavyweights, 2 pretty exciting heavyweights that like to stand and bang, and I think that the winner of this fight is going to get a contract for sure. The UFC needs heavyweights. I don't think this fight is going to leave the first round. Even if it does, I don't think the fight's going to leave the second round, and I think the winner of the fight is going to be Eduardo Neves, man. I think there's quite a few people on the Neves side. 91%, which is kind of crazy because if you look into Parkin's record, he does have an amateur background where he went 7-0-1 as an amateur, which is super impressive, but the level of competition that this guy's been fighting is just so questionable, you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of hard to tell what he's going to bring to the table. As a pro, he's never fought anyone with a winning record, and now he's taking on Eduardo Neves, who has taken on guys with pretty good records and good experience, you know? He debuted against a guy with a losing record, another losing record, another losing record, 7-7, and another losing record. How am I supposed to know exactly what he's going to look like against someone high level? This guy has not tested himself in his professional career. Well, Eduardo Neves has, especially in his last fight. You know, when he was debuting, he took on a guy with a losing record to get started, and then he took on a guy that was 1-1, and then when he was 2-0, he took on a guy that was 2-0, then 1-0, and then LFA gave him a guy that was 5-0 when he was 4-0, and he knocked him out just over a minute. Like, yeah, this guy's on a 3-fight first minute pretty much KO streak, apart from the 1 minute and 4 seconds fight, but let's just count it, 3-fight first minute KO streak for Eduardo Neves, and this guy's a brawler. He's got heavy hands, and he does throw volume as well, and he does just throw with intent to knock you out. You know, you don't get knockouts in the first minute without throwing with intent. And I guess on paper, Michael Parkin probably has the better wrestling, but I don't think he's going to be able to get Eduardo Neves to the ground, even if he even tries to initiate a grappling sequence, because Parkin does have good ground and pound. He's got wins by ground and pound in the past, but I think Eduardo Neves, I think he's just going to knock him out on the feet, man. Like, I just don't know what Parkin's going to bring because he hasn't tested himself. He's so untested. It's easy to look great against guys that are 6 wins, 9 losses, 7-7, 2-3, 2-17, and 1-10. Like, it's just, I just think Eduardo Neves is the more tested fighter. He's the more proven fighter. And he's young too. He's 22 years old. I'm actually not too sure how old Michael Parkin is. We'll see if I can find out really quickly. Michael Parkin's 26. So yeah, They're both young heavyweights. I think Neves has got a pretty bright future ahead of him if he can get past Parkin. I think he does. I think he's going to get the knockout in the first round. And that's just the pick, man. It's just kind of what it comes down to. I just don't know if I trust the guys that Michael Parkin's been fighting. I think Neves is the better striker anyway. I think he's probably more powerful as well, although Parkin does have KO wins in his career for sure. 5 wins by KO for him too. Someone's going to sleep. I think it's Parkin. He just hasn't tested himself against good competition. And I just don't know how much I can trust that compared to the guys that Neves has fought. Sorry for the rambly breakdown at the end, but that's just kind of what I've got to work with, is Parkin not fighting the greatest guys in the world and looking pretty good doing it, and then Neves looking great fighting really good competition, or just much better competition anyway. Like, he looked amazing against the 5-0 guy he fought 4 months ago. So I'm going to trust that. He's super young as well as Neves. He's going to be developing. Fighting at heavyweight is a big heavyweight too, weighed in at 263 pounds. I like that out of Neves. I will be picking him to win the fight. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the We Want Picks YouTube channel. And I will hopefully see you guys next week for Dana White's Contender Series Week 6. Let's hope we do well in the card. Let's hope we get a perfect card. I think there's a couple of fights that are going to slip me up. Josh Wang-Kim versus Cameron Saaiman is a tough one. That's a pretty iffy one there in my opinion. Erisson Fajah versus Jesus Santos Aguilar is a pretty iffy one, but I'm pretty confident in Denise Gomes. I'm pretty confident in Iran Gogoladze, and I'm also pretty confident in Eduardo Neves to all win the fights. So thank you guys very much, and I will see you in the next one.